All right, so day one with the FRC is done. Um, we started a little bit later. We got actually done earlier than I thought we would. We ended up cutting out at like 5, and I thought we were going to go to 6. So tomorrow is going to be a little bit more hands-on than today was, and that's how most certs go. So the first day is like covering a good portion of material. We didn't actually cover a huge amount in terms of the booklet. We got about a third done, it seemed like, and finished with cars, controlled auxiliary rotations. Tomorrow will be pails and rails, and it was super informative today. It was interesting to see, and this is when you start doing like multiple certifications, you start to see this overlap of information, even if that modality doesn't know about the other one, or they've heard of them, but that's about it, right? So a lot of overlaps with other things that I've learned. It was interesting to hear Drew talk, so we had Drew, Hunter, and I'm forgetting the other gentleman's name without looking up his Instagram account. But there's 3 guys doing it. Out of the 3, Hunter is the one that I'm most familiar with, just seeing his work, because this guy is just an incredible mover, right? But overall impressions, I do like what they're teaching for sure. Dre isn't there, so Dr. Spino isn't there, so it's just these 3 guys. Vigor Ground Fitness is really, really cool. Smaller than I thought it was going to be too, which that's usually how it goes, but they definitely got a really cool facility. Didn't introduce myself to the gentleman that runs it. Hoping to do that today. This was sold out. We had about 60 to 80 people without me doing a head count. I mean, it was a full room. It was crazy. I met a couple other interesting people. Met up actually with, as soon as I walked up, Seth Gibson, a buddy of mine that I've done one of his workshops in Tulsa. He was there and he's taking it. So we actually had lunch together. So just made it a more special event for me to see a familiar face. But in terms of the information, like I said, you see overlaps with other modalities, but one of the cooler things for me was the stuff that Drew would talk about. So we talked about food, and he would go off on a tangent and be like, well, your body's geared for salt, fat, and sugar. And that's the stuff that I learned in nutrition, I mean, years ago. So stuff like that's nothing new to me, but it's interesting because other people haven't thought about that. And typically what I've noticed outside of grip approach is most of this stuff I've already been, and even actually, grip approach, I've already been familiarized with a lot of this stuff. I haven't taken anything at this point where it's just like, I know none of this. Grip approach, probably I knew the least amount in DNS. And I knew grip approach more because I took a DNS course. So, I do like the certification overall, for sure. Like, great information. I like what they're doing with it, where they're putting it, how you're looking at individuals, understanding that training at a gym isn't what you evolved to do. This notion of training is a man-made word. Exercising and working out and all that is man-made. How we look at athletes, though, because people are going to do those activities. They all do different activities that they want to do, skiing and all that, and conditioning the body to adapt to that and the environment that we live in now, understanding what that environment is, and trying to make you safe if you get put in a position. And there's so many little golden lines that Drew would say that are Dre's, like when you get one of them, I'm gonna butcher all these, but like one of them that stuck out to me was the notion of like, you'll wish you had trained the range of motion that you got injured in. Meaning, like, typically that range of motion that you got injured in isn't a range of motion you've ever taken before, or you rarely did. That's why you got injured. Or conditioning an injury to go beyond the point. Like, for instance, if we had some ACL stuff that we did. People tore their ACL, they've had surgery, physical therapists get them back to where they were pre-injury. This system says, well, that's why you were injured. Let's go beyond that. Let's make this a more conditioned range of motion for you so that you don't end up in that predicament of having an injury. And it's not necessarily that it's 100% going to prevent that, A lot of times sometimes will happen is it's just too big of an event that's happened and you do have an injury, but it's diminished the outcome of that so that it's not as big of an injury. And then we covered, like I said, going through shoulder cars. We did shoulder cars, scap, cervical spine, just the spine, like lumbar and thoracic, wrist, elbows, tibia, and ankle, and then we looked at the feet. And that was interesting because looking at like stuff that they're like, can you lift your big toe and keep your other toes down? Can you lift your little toes and keep your big toe down? Conditioning that foot. And they don't know restorative exercise and Katie Bowman. They've heard the name, or at least Drew said he did. But and she lives here in Sequim, but that's the stuff that they do in restorative exercise. So I'd see these overlaps with like restorative exercise in DNS, dynamic neuromuscular stabilization, or grip approach. I'd see these overlaps with all this stuff, and it's just another tool in that toolbox. So when somebody comes in, you can say, hey, let's look at this. It is a testing system. The test, just like DNS and grip approach, the test is the thing that you'll ultimately do as the exercise, if you want to call it the exercise or the corrective or whatever it may be. Like, that's the thing that you're going to do. That's the antidote, right? So encouraging, I'm trying to think, like, if would this be a certification that I would encourage all trainers to do? I mean, it definitely depends on what your practice is. Their viewpoint is this as a basis for other movements. Whatever you want to do, this is your basis. Beyond that, you're always going to do cars and pails and rails if you need to. They have a morning routine that we kind of covered, looking at I'm going to forget the name of it. Essentially the activation of the rest of the body, right? So I'm not passive or relaxed with the rest of my body as I do one of these cars. You're active, and then you do that a certain percentage compared to whatever the limb is that's moving, right? So my shoulder's doing a car, like that is a specific activation compared to the rest of my body, because I don't want to be relaxed. Looking at regressions and progressions from that, because it's the tool, the thing that, and it's the thing that I struggle with, is the interpretation of that tool. They're giving you these tools, but to move beyond that, I have a client that has this and that. They don't want those questions because it's too specific, right? They're giving you this overall thing, and then beyond that, you can fine tune it and figure out other ways to utilize the tool. That I do like. I like that they're explaining that and they're pushing on that end. Or sometimes I've done a cert and I left and I was like, I'll have a question that I don't know how to work with a particular client. How do I do that? Over time you learn, like, oh, you can use this, but you need to come up with your own things. And some modalities push that it's our way or no way, so they really encourage you not to go outside of that, where this one they are. So I do appreciate that. I think it's definitely one that most trainers should take, like understanding the difference between flexibility and mobility, which I knew prior to this, but they're honing in on that and really making sure that trainers, physical therapists, whoever, understand that notion. Passive range of motion really versus active range of motion in regards to flexibility, right? Because those two things can be vastly different. So I would encourage anybody to take this. It's $900. That can be a little bit more steep for a lot of people, but I mean, the MoveNat cert when I took it was $1,200. So there are way expensive certifications out there. So I think this one is definitely worth the money for sure. I like their approach to everything. For me, it's the only downside I experience is when I hear somebody talk about things that I'm really familiar with, but there's 80 people and I can't engage. Like, I want to talk to you about that a lot. Can't do that, like, because it's one of those things, like, I already know the information. So I can't take that conversation deeper. I can afterwards, and I'll maybe talk to them for a second, but I also understand that everybody else wants to ask them questions at that point, and their time is very valuable, so I can't do that to an extreme like I would want to. But today's day 1. Tomorrow we'll finish up, and then I'll probably do another video with day 2 and kind of the wrap up, and then I'll shoot another video down the road of how I've integrated this in my practice. Because a lot of stuff I was like, we were talking about older populations and how they utilize this, and I immediately thought to my client Larry, some of my other clients where I've been experiencing things and I haven't quite found the solution with DNS or grip where this will integrate really, really well. And I think the other one's going to be taking this and molding it the way I need to, because I actually asked Hunter too. I was like, all right, will we train like very heavy set people where they might not have access to that range of motion purely based off their size? What do we do? And he's like, it's definitely that. I always think of the keep it simple stupid KISS, right? Like they really harped on that, like don't make it complicated. They're gonna have to move around that. You're just gonna have to modify that as you would with yourself or with any other modality. So I liked the simplicity of what they're pushing versus going insanely complex and then leaving you there. And especially when you're done, for anybody that has done a cert, usually you're like, I can't remember any of that. We'll have access online to a full library, and we'll gain access after this, where we can watch videos on all this stuff, looking at bioflow and all this. And these things can get insanely complicated, but they also understand that they have us for 2 days. For us to cover all that crazy in depth just isn't gonna work. So day 2, I'm impressed for sure. It did feel like the majority of the day is stuff that I've learned at some point with something else, but it just reinforces that the things that I'm doing, the things that I'm learning are going in the right direction. Sometimes I can get, because I know it so well, like I have to pay attention, but sometimes it's my brain, it wants the new stuff, so I'll feel myself kind of like, ooh, I'm starting to lose energy, right? I'm starting to get tired now because my brain already registers. It's heard it from the 10, 12, whatever other certifications that I've taken. So, but if you haven't done anything else, this is definitely a good place to start. The combination of this between grip approach and DNS is definitely something to look into as well if you want to go that route, right? If you don't want to go like crazy specific with all this, I would go this route with strength and conditioning, because that's what they're geared towards, is strength and conditioning. They want the athlete to perform. They want you to be able to lift again, right? Because Westside Barbell, like the strength training, powerlifting mecca here in America, and I'd say even the world, is adopting this, and they understand the importance of it. So that should be a sign, like this is one of those things that's heading in the right direction. Rafe Kelly, the natural movement guy that I go to, he uses FRC stuff, so he understands the importance also, and a lot of this is built off of evolutionary biology. So they're looking at how our tissues adapted, how they evolved, and what they need now in this environment. The content is really, really good. What they're doing is really, really good. Downside for me is overlapping information that I've been in so ingrained in at this point. Like I can feel myself like kind of like not losing interest, but I just start to get tired because we're there for 8 hours. So, but if you haven't done any of that stuff, I mean, it's gonna be all new information for you, right? So that is it for day 1 of the cert. I recommend it. I know that was kind of like a rambling of a bunch of stuff, but just wanted to kind of more or less discuss long format, my thoughts on that, especially looking at all the other certifications that feed into this and that I can utilize in my practice: medical exercise, DNS, grip approach, MoveNat combatives, parkour DAP level 1, Onnit foundations, all the restorative institute workshops, the American Combative Warrior Arts, self-defense stuff. There's some I'm forgetting too that I know I'm forgetting. So it is one of those that I probably would have taken more at the start versus now. just because I think it is so foundational with everything else. So, but that is it, guys. We have sirens going, dogs barking, all that other stuff out here in my aunt's backyard. So that is it. If you liked the video, hit the like button for me. If you want to continue to follow along with all my content, hit the subscribe button for me. I'm going to have part 2 tomorrow, so check back for that.